Okay, we're going to begin our LAFCo meeting of April 18th. And Commissioner Ramirez, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, and I would just like to ask for a moment of reflection for the passing of our former First Lady, Barbara Bush.
Thank you.
Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's have a moment of silence for the passing of First Lady Barbara Bush, and appropriate to do it with our Pledge of Allegiance, a very patriotic woman. Thank you. With that, could we have the roll call?
Commissioner Freeman? Here. Commissioner Parvin? Here. Commissioner Ramirez?
Here.
Commissioner Rooney?
Here.
Commissioner Ross?
Here.
Commissioner Zaragoza?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Bilda de la Pena? Present. Alternate Commissioner Richards?
Here.
Chair Parks?
Here. And then our next item's agenda review. I know we have one request to take item 12 and move it above item 9, which would be after 8. Are there any other requests?
Thank you, Chair. I spoke with the executive officer. There's one change on item, let's see here. 13, thank you. Item 13, to make a correction.
Yeah, I can mention that during the presentation if you would like.
Thank you.
Okay, great. With that, we have one change to the agenda. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as revised? Take your choice. We have motions in a second. And with that, is all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Seeing none, then that passes. We'll go ahead then to commission presentations and announcements. Do any of the commissioners have any presentations or announcements? We are doing our general plan update at the county and seeing where LAFCo kind of plays a role in that too, and preserving our guidelines for orderly development. Not having any other comments, we'll go on.
Madam Chair, it was a milestone. We went home, about 7 o'clock last night?
That's right. That's right. My seat is still warm. We'll go then to public comments. I have one public comment card. Jim Tobias.
Good morning. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm going to be speaking on the annexation. I know there's a meeting at 1, but I'm not going to be there. So I just wanted to give you a few thoughts, and then we'll move on. You know, the LAFCo board approved the annexation without knowing what the MOA included. And the MOA was completed, I think, at the end of March, and it wasn't made public until last Tuesday. And so my question to you as commissioners, you know, how many of you would actually agree to a contract that you haven't read? None. How many of you would take an agreement to your city, support it, that you haven't read? How many of you would go to the county with an agreement that you haven't read? And that's exactly what happened to the citizens of Santa Paula. And my concern is this thing is a big deal. I was born and raised in Santa Paula when we had volunteer fire department. It was great. Off 10th Street, the siren would go off. It sounded like an air raid. And then the merchants would come out. They would meet at a location. Someone would drive the truck, and everyone would help out. So my concern is the document is over 90 pages, and there are amendments that we didn't even see. They did a presentation on Tuesday. They were pie graphs we couldn't read. They were so small. And again, there were amendments that weren't even discussed. So this is a big deal. I think there are other ways to do it more effectively. Our town is poor. We don't have a lot of money. And now we're talking about giving 79% of our property tax away to the county. The county has over a $2 billion budget. I think we're at 50 million with all the enterprise funds. Our general fund is 15 million. And what's happening is, with pension costs going up, the pension costs and public safety all come out of the same pot. League of Cities is talking about crisis for most cities in 7 to 8 years. And so with this agreement, we've picked up the pension costs for our firemen. Well, you know, it's based on, I think, the last 3 years of their salary. You know, is the money even going to be there? Where's the rest of the money for the rest of the employees? And so we wanted time to evaluate what we should have done, and we really had no input at this whatsoever, is to bring in an actuary, a pension actuary from the League of Cities, to look at this thing, to see where this thing was going. So I know this thing is moving forward. I'm really concerned because, again, you know, we don't have a lot of money. We've lost Adams and Fagan, and the reason we wanted those was just to provide general fund revenue so we could provide essential services to the city of Santa Paula. You all have a tough job to do. I know it's tough, but what I want to do is read a letter into the record, and let me read it to you, and then I'll get out of your way. I need to go to work. And it's great being off the council, chasing my 3 grandkids around. I was 65 yesterday, had my 3 grandkids. It was cool.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. Yeah, I graduated from Santa Paula High in '71. I thought, God, in 2018, I'm going to be 65. I'll never get there.
And you're a former council member too, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
mayor of Santa Paula. Anyway,
Yes,
let me read
and
this,
mayor.
and then I'm going to put this into the record, and I have to put bigger letters too now that I'm 65. To LAFCo regarding procedural due process. Because the MOA regarding fire annexation was not made public until 4/10/18, and the protest period ended today, 4/18, the citizens of Santa Paula were deprived of procedural due process in that 8 days is clearly insufficient time to review and comment on a matter of this importance. We ask you extend the review period by 60 days from 4/10/18. Respectfully, Jim Tobias, citizen of Santa Paula. Now, I'm going to leave this for the record, and the other one will go to the press. Thanks for all your time, your hard work, and I know you have a tough job.
Thank you. And Commissioner Zaragoza, you had a comment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I thank you, Mr. Tobias, for your information, but my understanding that the MOA or the contracts were between the city of Santa Paula and the fire district, and our purview, our responsibilities were to follow LAFCo law,
Right, I understand.
not to really work in the contract. Is that correct? You know, so we really had nothing to do with the contract, but the city of Santa Paula came here, the city council, they approved it, they were for it, they worked with the fire district, and they worked with the city of Ventura and all the folks that were involved in that, but our LAFCo duties were just following our LAFCo law, not
No, I
having
understand.
to do anything with the contract.
Yeah, but my concern, and there was some discussion at that meeting 60 days ago, is that why you were approving this agreement without anybody seeing the MOA. And that kind of prompted me to say, you know, let's look at this sucker. If you had the MOA completed 60 days ago, fine, you knew what you were doing. And I know your rules are different, but our concern as a taxpayer, you know, we're poor, we're giving 79% of our property tax. I just want to put this in the record.
I understand.
So if down the road that, you know, we could look at this again, or,
And thank you for sharing your concerns. I just want to share that with, I'm not sure.
no,
And
I
I
understand your
did
role.
ask our executive director to give us a status report, so we might as well do that now, if that's
That's
okay
right.
with you.
Anyway, thank you so much. I know you have a tough job. And I'm glad
Thank you.
to be a grandpa.
So you'd like the status report of the Santa Paula annexation? Well, as you know, the commission approved that annexation back in January, and it was subject to protest proceedings. And the commission authorized the protest proceedings to take the longest amount of time allowed for in LAFCo law, and that was 60 days. So that 60-day protest period during which property owners and registered voters can submit written protests against the approval started on February 18th, and it ends today. Now, at 1 o'clock today, there is scheduled a protest hearing, and that's the culmination of the 60-day protest period. Now, we can take, or I can take, because the commission has delegated the protest proceedings to me, I will be able to accept written protests up until the close of that hearing today. Then we will count the protests. And I have no discretion on what my decision is. It is based entirely on the number of protests that we receive. So based on our calculations from the elections division, it will take approximately 2,900 registered voters to submit written protests to reach a 25% threshold. Or it will take about 1,700 property owners to submit valid written protests to reach a 25% threshold. If we do not receive that 25%, I have no other choice other than to order the annexation. Now, that will be subject to the remaining conditions of approval, but that is the protest proceedings. If there is 25% to 50% of registered voters submitting protests, or 25 to 50% of landowners who also own 25% of the assessed value of the land in the city, if we receive enough protests for that, then the annexation is subject to the voters. If we receive more than 50% of the voters, then that terminates annexation proceedings. So to date, we've received 42 protests out of the thousands that we need. So unless we receive a couple thousand voter protests or about 1,600 property owner protests by soon after 1 o'clock today, the annexation will proceed.
Thank you for that. And I think, the issue that LAFCo was looking at was the annexation. And my understanding that the MOA, as you read it, and we weren't allowed to see it at the time because it was confidential, basically just memorialized how the cost sharing will be, but we knew the larger picture of the percentage of property tax and those major issues. We all had hoped it would come out as soon as it could, and that was because of the attorneys involved. It did take a while to dot those I's, but I think the fundamental question is what you're concerned about, and that is having the county take it and then the share of the property tax that goes with it. And I at this point, I really can't go and debate it. It's not on our agenda, but we do appreciate, the concern that you have, and we wish obviously the city of Santa Paula well, and I think we are feeling comfortable that you will be better off with the annexation and the fire district.
One last comment. The issue was we didn't know what we were protesting. That could have been the best thing in the world. And I don't even want to.
Yeah.
I don't
Point
even
of
want
order, this is public comments.
Okay,
And
I'm
I
sorry.
feel
Yeah, you're
it's,
right.
it's a violation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But it should be called an evaluation period, not a protest period. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment cards for public comments? I believe we have Joe Vesia for item 9. Okay, we'll hold off on that and move on then to our consent agenda items. These are items 7 and 8, include the minutes and budget reports. Do we have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments, questions? No. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstained? Okay, that passes unanimously. And now we'll go on to item 12 at the request of our executive director. This is the audited financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a presentation on the annual audit, and Canali from Vavrnik, Trine, and Day is here to present the findings of the audit.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kinali Sukasam, and I'm with Vavrnik, Trine, Day & Company. We've completed our audit of the financial statements for Ventura Local Agency for Mission Commission for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017, and have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance on the Commission's financial statements. The significant notes to the Commission's accounting policies are identified in Note 1 to the financial statements. Further, I'm happy to report that there are no difficulties or disagreements between the auditors and Commission staff during the course of the audit. We appreciate the opportunity of serving as LAFCo's external auditors and would like to thank Commission staff for their cooperation during the audit process. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Are there any questions on the audit? Thank you for coming and speaking, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. I always like to ask this question.
Sure.
Could you, you actually were the audit partner, correct?
Yes.
Could you, is there any recommendation you could make for improvement? Anything
For
at all?
For fiscal year 2017, we didn't identify any areas of improvement. Typically, if there was, we would identify it in our report to those in charge of governance, which would be this board. But for fiscal year 16-17, we did not identify any issues.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that then, do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you for coming
Thank you.
and making the presentation. And now we'll go to item 9. This is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on the Camarillo Reorganization and Sphere of Influence Amendments, North Pleasant Valley Groundwater Treatment Facility. Good morning, Ms. Osby.
Good morning. Is this a different pointer? Is this the pointer as well?
The big one in the middle.
That's the, just in case I need to identify anything on the screen there. The purpose of the North Pleasant Valley Groundwater Treatment Facility project is to improve water quality within the Pleasant Valley groundwater basin by extracting and treating brackish water to address saline water intrusion from outside the basin, and also to reduce the City of Camarillo's reliance on imported water from the Calleguas Municipal Water District by distributing treated potable water to its customers. The Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency, which monitors water quality and regulates groundwater extraction within the Fox Canyon aquifer, has capped the city's groundwater extraction volume at almost 3,200 acre-feet per year. Fox Canyon has allowed the city to extract a maximum of 4,500 acre-feet per year at the proposed facility, which would result in the generation of approximately 3,800 acre-feet per year of potable water. The brine would be discharged into the Regional Salinity Management Pipeline located within Lewis Road. The city plans to have an eventual extraction capacity of 9,000 acre-feet per year if and when allowed by Fox Canyon, with an ultimate potable water production volume of approximately 7,500 acre-feet per year. The facility, which is expected to be operated by 2 to 3 staff at a time, would result in the additional demand for water and sewer services. The proposal involves the annexation of the groundwater treatment facility and a neighboring church to the city, which in combination will generate the demand for additional 3 acre-feet per year of water. Additional sewer demand is to the Camarillo Sanitary District and is limited to the new facility. The proposal area is located about 200 feet north of the intersection of Las Posas Road and Somas Road, near the northeast portion of the city. It is immediately south of the Rancho Campana High School and immediately east of the Camarillo Library, which are located within the city. That's shaded in gray in this picture here. While the project is driven by the need to annex the groundwater treatment facility to the city and the Camarillo Sanitary District, the Church of Latter-day Saints property to the west is also included in the proposal so as to prevent the creation of an unincorporated county island. And territory to the south of both properties is also included in the proposal. That's the area within the red outline that's shaded in gray. And that is so that all jurisdictional boundary changes will align with the appropriate service areas and city boundaries. The proposal includes several components. The sphere of influence amendments include an increase to the City of Camarillo, Camarillo Sanitary District, and Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District, as these agencies provide services within the city, and a reduction for the Ventura County Service Area number 33 and Ventura County Waterworks District number 19, as these agencies do not typically provide services within the city. Related to that, the reorganization includes annexations to the city, Camarillo Sanitary District, and Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District, and detachments from the Gold Coast Transit District, Ventura County Resource Conservation District, Ventura County Service Areas number 32 and 33, and County Waterworks District number 19. Next, I'll go into a little bit of detail about each of those components. So on the left, that is the City of Camarillo Sphere of Influence Amendment and Annexation. The areas, on all of these images, the area shown in red is the area of change. So you'll see the total of about 7.81 acres on the left for City of Camarillo will be included in the city's sphere and will be annexed to the city. That includes both the treatment facility and the church parcel. In the middle is the Camarillo Sanitary District, and there the area of annexation and sphere of influence amendment includes just the groundwater treatment facility, as the church parcel is already within the district. And on the right, for the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District, the annexation area includes those same two parcels, as well as area to the south that's already within the district sphere and is already within the city boundaries as well. The sphere of influence amendments and detachments are shown on this slide, and that includes the Ventura County Service Area number 33, which is authorized to provide recreation and park services outside cities and recreation and park districts. The area to be detached includes that same area, the church, as well as the proposed treatment facility, and the sphere of influence amendment includes the detachment of that same area, plus the Rancho Campana High School area to the north, which is already within the city. Also, the Ventura County Waterworks District number 19, the detachment includes the treatment facility and area to the south that's already within the city, and the sphere of influence amendment includes the same area plus the area to the west, which is the church parcel, and additional area that is within the city already. Additional necessary detachments are shown here, and that is for the Gold Coast Transit District and Ventura County Resource Conservation District, as well as Ventura County Service Area number 32. LAFCo law requires that the Commission consider several factors related to sphere of influence amendments, and those are listed here on the screen. The proposal area currently supports agriculture, a commercial office complex, and a church. A 4.7-acre area is currently used for agriculture and is planned for use as a groundwater treatment facility. No other changes in land use are proposed or anticipated. The proposal will result in new demands on water service from the city and sewer service from the Camarillo Sanitary District. Both agencies have demonstrated that they have the ability to provide the necessary services. LAFCo Commissioner's Handbook. The LAFCo Commissioner's Handbook includes provisions related to agricultural and open space preservation, and that is summarized here on the screen and is also discussed in detail in the staff report. The proposal area is contiguous to land that is used for urban purposes, such as a high school, library, and office building complex located within the city's jurisdiction. Development is expected to occur within the next 2 years. The city has demonstrated that due to the need for this facility to be in close proximity to existing water wells and the regional salinity management pipeline within Lewis Road, development location options were limited to prime agricultural lands. City staff states that rising salinity levels within the Pleasant Valley groundwater basin have caused reduced crop yields and the need to grow high salinity tolerant crops. The treatment facility is intended to remove saline groundwater from the basin and reduce the migration of poor quality groundwater into other areas of the basin. Nearby residences are a distance of approximately 500 feet from the development site and are separated from the site by other uses and facilities, such as existing agriculture, commercial office buildings, the Camarillo Public Library, and Las Posas Road. The facility is expected to generate some noise and traffic during well drilling, construction activities, as well as operation of the facility. However, nearby water well owners are also expected to benefit from improved water quality. The facility would include a minimum 50-foot wide buffer between it and surrounding uses. The proposal area is not located within an area that is subject to a Greenbelt agreement. The city determined that the proposal is consistent with the Save Open Space and Agricultural Resources Ordinance because the groundwater treatment facility is necessary for the delivery of essential public services, that's water, and the church facility already contains an existing urbanized use. The proposal is consistent with the city's general plan as well. An EIR, supplemental EIR, and second supplemental EIR were prepared for the project and certified by the City Council, and no significant impacts were identified that could not be reduced to less than significant levels. LAFCo staff prepared an addendum to the EIR to include additional area within the proposal area that would result in jurisdictional and sphere of influence boundaries that are consistent with the appropriate service areas and would better align with city boundaries, and that is that strip to the south that I showed earlier that was already within the city. The notice of public hearing was published in the Ventura County Star, posted on the Ventura LAFCo website and outside the County Government Center. It was mailed to all property owners and registered voters within the proposal area and within 300 feet of the proposal area, and emailed to all affected local agencies. We've received no comments. The Commission may waive protest proceedings if notice has been provided to landowners and registered voters within the affected territory. The notice discloses that unless written opposition to the proposal is received prior to the conclusion of Commission proceedings, the Commission intends to waive protest proceedings, and written opposition from landowners and registered voters within the affected territory is not received before the conclusion of Commission proceedings, and it appears that these criteria have been met. The recommendations to your Commission are that you certify that you have reviewed and considered the information contained in the EIR, and adopt the findings and mitigation measures, and adopt the resolutions related to the sphere of influence amendments and the reorganization. And that concludes the presentation. We also have staff here from the city if there are any specific questions for them.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Very comprehensive. I have a question. Do you know who provides water and sanitary services to the church at this time?
The church receives sanitary services from the Camarillo Sanitary District and water services from County Waterworks District number 19.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Parvin?
A question on page 24. At the top of the page, it mentions the proposed groundwater treatment facility can be evacuated for short periods and operated remotely to allow for pesticide application on adjacent farmland. How long is that planned for, the evacuation? Whenever the strawberries need fertilizer? Or?
I assume so. I don't know the specifics on that.
Or is the strawberry patch going away in the next 2 to 5 years?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
no.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Yes, Alternate Commissioner Richards.
Page 23 of your report, under subsection D, refers to a utility easement 40-foot wide provided for pipeline utilities and vehicular access from Somas Road. Question, is that utility easement part of this project? And if so, why is it not included as part of the annexation?
It is unpaved. It is still used also for the neighboring agricultural property, I believe, but I think the city can better answer that question.
Okay.
And we do have a card from the city. Are there other questions this time? Okay. I had my initial thought was if you're going to take water out of the basin, you're going to be limiting the amount of water in the basin, even though you're cleaning it and using it, that you're limiting the amount of water. But I see in the resolution from Fox Canyon Groundwater that the basins actually have rising groundwater levels as a result of a large volume of poor quality water originating outside the agency. So that addresses that question. Because I know that obviously there's a limited amount of water out there in the Oxnard Plain, but this apparently is getting a lot of other water that's brackish, among other things. Oh, yes, Mr. Richards.
One other question. Reading through the report, the city identifies that they're going to zone the property RE. I'm assuming that's like residential estate or something. Does not the city have a public facilities zone designation, or at least zone it open space, so that if they don't proceed with this project, that it doesn't revert to a residential zoning classification?
I believe RE is rural exclusive.
Rural exclusive? And are public facilities allowed within rural exclusive?
Yes.
And the density for that, if it were to become housing, which RE can, is it just like 1 unit for 2 acres, or do you have?
I don't know what the answer
Okay, we
is.
can ask that. Yes, Commissioner Rooney?
It's a procedural question for our council. Is there a place inside of our agenda that talks about the review from a legal perspective, that we have addressed all the legal issues and how it relates to LAFCo policy and any other policy in place?
The standard practice is for a draft staff report to be submitted to me, and I do legal review of that staff report. And I've done that in this case and did not identify any legal issues that would prevent the commission from approving the recommended actions.
Okay, thank you.
And just to address Commissioner Richards' question, there isn't anything, or is there anything that we can do to have a requirement that it is actually for the project that's being proposed, so that if it doesn't, it's now within their city, they can rezone it to anything else?
LAFCo law places a time limit during which a city cannot change the zoning after annexation, and that applies by operation of law. So your commission doesn't need to take any particular action to invoke that. Beyond that, your commission does not have the authority to control the land use on that parcel.
And so what is that period of time?
2 years.
2 years. And so if nothing happens within 2 years, does this decision is it revoked?
No, the annexation would be final. After the 2-year period, the city would be able to rezone the property pursuant to the standard rules that would apply to rezoning any property within the city.
And then my question was before 2 years. Then that your answer remains the same?
Well, so in other words, you're asking if the city were to violate that 2-year period and rezone before 2 years expires? Then there'd be a matter of who would have the standing to bring a legal action to compel that not to happen.
Okay.
And the commission probably would have legal standing. I'd have to look into it, though, to determine that for sure.
But this is the first time I heard that there's actually that requirement of LAFCo that this applies for 2 years only.
Right, and that concern was raised years ago, and that's one of the reasons why the commission adopted a policy that requires entitlements to be approved before it comes to LAFCo. So the city has put in a tremendous amount of effort and expense and has conveyed to LAFCo that this really is their intent to construct this, along with the timeframes in the policies requiring construction to occur within 5 years. It really gives the commission a comfort level that this is what the city intends to do.
Well, it certainly took several different annexations going on here, almost a dozen, so it took a lot of coordination to get to this point, that's for sure. Okay, with that, we have the one speaker card, and if you'd like to come up, and is it Vaca? Yes. Oh, that's easy. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joe Vaca, and I'm the Director of Community Development with the City of Camarillo. I'd like to thank Executive Director Luoma and Andrea Osdy for all their hard work and collaboration. We've gone through extensive planning on this project, and we do appreciate the staff recommendation for support. We do have $15 million in grants available for this purpose. The city will be purchasing the property for public purposes, and we don't anticipate the property being developed in any other capacity beyond the Pleasant Valley Groundwater Treatment Facility. So we have a team of staff here available to answer questions, and I just want to again thank the staff for their hard work and collaboration.
Thank you. We have one question from Commissioner Richards.
To answer my previous question regarding the utility easement and pipeline access from Summits Road.
Yes, that's going to remain agricultural property under the existing ownership of the farmers adjacent to the property. They want to preserve that access for their use as well, so we're going to obtain an easement for that. And in regards to the zoning, it's rural exclusive, and the adjacent Camarillo Library and the adjacent high school are also rural exclusive, and those allow for public uses.
Your primary access is off of Las Posas Road,
Yes.
is that correct?
Correct.
Commissioner Rooney, did you have a question?
No, I would just like to move approval of all the items under number 9.
I have a question too. There is now a voter approval needed in some areas in Camarillo to rezone land. Is it applied to this area?
So under our curb ordinance, which is the local version of SOAR in Camarillo, this project is exempt as it's a public project for public purposes.
Got it. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Zaragoza, did you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to second it, but.
Okay, got it. We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections or abstentions?
I just have one more question.
Yes,
It happened way too fast for me.
Okay, Commissioner Parvin.
Mr. Vaca, I hate to make you come back, but I'm going to. So can you tell me about this? I know, maybe most people aren't bothered by it, but if I was an employee that was working at the facility and I had to be evacuated for short periods of time, can you tell me, was that only going to happen in a fluke that people would be evacuated during a spraying? Or
we would anticipate that as needed, we would be able to keep the employees off hours during any spraying and or treatment for pests.
Okay.
So it'll be planned ahead of time in coordination with adjacent property owners as needed.
Okay, so is that the strawberry patch then?
There's the adjacent strawberry patch and the agriculture to the north as well, yes.
Okay.
And the strawberry patch is being preserved. That's been a
It's being preserved, did you just say?
Yes, it is. It's being preserved. The strawberry stand. That's been a consistent concern of the community, and we're
Thank you for
preserving it.
preserving the strawberry patch. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Ross?
Yeah, I would say that 40-foot utility easement would also work as a buffer for any applications that the farmers would be making. I do wish that we wouldn't be paving over more prime agriculture land, recognizing that it is a limited resource, but recognizing in the staff report that there's really no other place for this to go. On top of the fact that I'm assuming this is a reverse osmosis system. Do you know what type of, I got a nod in the back of the room there.
Yes, it is.
In my experience, those are very loud systems requiring a lot of energy to essentially filter the water through very fine membranes. There's been no discussion or concerns from the church or the school with those kinds of noises that would be emitted from the system?
No, that was analyzed significantly through the environmental process, and we're able to mitigate that to a sufficient level.
Very good.
And the church is benefiting too because they're going to be annexed to the city. Right?
Correct, and they're aware of the application and have submitted a letter in support.
And there was no protest according to the report too either. So.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And if you have additional land available out there, we're always looking to get some rainwater capture basins. That might be another opportunity to blend the water, for example. Are there any other comments before the vote? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? I'll say, all those approved, please say aye.
Aye.
And no one's abstaining? Okay, then that passes. Congratulations, a lot of work.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the support.
Yeah, a lot of work to put that all together. Our next item then on the agenda is item number 13, and this is regarding the initiating spheres of influence and updates, influence reviews.
Actually, we should be on item 10.
We should be?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I just zipped right through, didn't I? I was just about to adjourn the meeting. It was a long meeting last night. Item 10, sorry. Review and readopt the LAFCo fee schedule.
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. And I really don't have a presentation other than to recommend that you review and readopt it. We're recommending no changes to the current staff composite rate of $155 an hour.
Do we have any comments or emotions? Yes, Commissioner Rooney.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to quickly zip through here. What's that fee schedule? Oh, thanks. Oh, sorry, my comments are on another one.
Yes,
I'll move
13.
staff's
Regarding fees.
recommendation.
I'll second.
If we have no comments from the audience,
Public?
I will move staff's recommendation.
I'll second Parman's.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to keep it as it is. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Not seeing any, that passes. Now, item 11. This is our budget for 2018-19 and proposed budget at this point.
Okay, again, thank you, Madam Chair. This is the recommended proposed budget for fiscal year 2018-2019. Now, as you know, LAFCo law does require that each LAFCo adopt a proposed budget by May 1st and a final budget by June 15th. We have scheduled the final budget for your consideration at the May meeting. I'll start off with this year in review, this fiscal year. I'll start off with expenditures. The Commission has separated expenditures into three categories. They are total salaries and benefits, total services and supplies, and contingencies. Now, for the current fiscal year, the Commission adopted a budget of, here we go, $743,491 for these three categories. Now, we are projecting a significant amount of savings. Salaries, we're projecting about $471,000. Total services and supplies, $115,000, and we do not anticipate use of any of the contingencies for a projected expenditure of about $587,000. Now, this leads to an estimated savings of approximately $156,311 this year. Now, regarding revenue, again, for the adopted budget, we anticipated revenue in the realm of $648,491. We're projecting revenue to exceed that, $655,491, for an increase of $7,000. And this is due to the fact that we anticipated interest earnings at $1,500. They're actually going to be, they're projected to be about $8,500. So there's an estimated increase there of $7,000. So when you take the projected expenditure savings of $156,000 and you add the revenue increase, the projected revenue increase, we're looking at a projected fund balance at the end of this year of over $163,000. Now, I am going to be recommending that we put most of that toward next year's budget, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. So on to the proposed budget. As I mentioned, expenditures are separated into three categories: salary and employee benefits, services and supplies, and contingencies. And I'll talk about each one of these briefly. The first being salaries and benefits. So for the current year adopted budget, the Commission allocated $525,850 toward total salaries and benefits. We're proposing an increase to $548,700, which is an increase of almost $23,000, or about 4.3%. And I'll break this down a little bit here. So the majority of that increase comes from a proposed increase in regular salaries and associated benefit accounts. For instance, regular salaries here, the adopted budget is $350,500. We're proposing an increase to $368,500, an increase of $18,000 or 5.1%. Now, this is really to cover the costs of prospective merit increases for staff as allowed for under the county's management resolution under which LAFCo staff operates. Now, this increase is going to be offset by a decrease in what's the management retiree health benefit. Now, this is a benefit that was paid to the previous clerk office manager who retired a few years ago. It's a benefit that the Commission was responsible for providing up until February of last year. So it ended in February, and so the Commission no longer has to fund this account code. So that's going to be a savings of $7,100. That was the amount that was allocated this fiscal year. Moving on to expenditures, services and supplies. The adopted budget provides about $150,000 for services and supplies. We are proposing a slight reduction to $147,750. This reduction is about $2,300 or about 1.5%. The reason for this reduction is primarily attributable to a reduction in the cost for geographical information systems from $18,000 to $14,000, and in attorney services from $22,500 to $20,000. The reason for that is we went back and looked at the attorney costs over the last 5 years and determined that $20,000 should cover all anticipated costs for the next 5 years, each year. And this was offset by an increase in expenditures to cost allocation plan charges. Now, this charge is set by the county, and it's to cover services that we receive, such as general services from the General Services Agency, which oversees the building, human resources, the auditor controller for payroll, that kind of thing. So this increase is going from $4,500 to about $12,000. Now, the reason it was so low this fiscal year was to make up for an overcharge that LAFCo was charged the previous 2 years. So every 2 years they go in and look at the actual costs and essentially rebate that money when they can. So the $12,000 will be looked at in 2 more years to see if it was accurate. And contingencies. Commission policy does mandate a 10% total expenditures for contingencies. For this fiscal year, that was $67,591. We're proposing $69,646 for an increase of a little over $2,000. So these are the total expenditures. The adopted budget, $743,491. We're projected at $587,180. We're proposing $766,096. So the total expenditures for next fiscal year represents a 3% increase, or $22,605 from the current fiscal year. And as part of the revenue, I will be recommending an appropriation of $115,000 of the projected unassigned fund balance. So we can move on to financing sources. Again, they're separated into fund balance, miscellaneous revenues, which is interest, earnings, and fees, and then revenue from other agencies. So first, we'll talk about the fund balance. As I mentioned in the year in review, we are anticipating a fund balance of $163,311. We are recommending that $115 of this be appropriated toward the budget for next year. And I'm not going to explain this entire table, but with the appropriation of $115,000, we're looking at by the end of next fiscal year, the Commission will be able to retain the $100,000 committed in its litigation account per Commission policies. We will have the $127,683 in unassigned fund balance that would cover 60 days working capital, also in the Commissioner's handbook. And that leaves us with, we will have estimated $275,486 in unassigned fund balance. So when all this is added together, we'll have a total anticipated of a little over $500,000 in fund balance, which is a little bit less than the actual from last fiscal year. Miscellaneous revenue. Our miscellaneous revenue includes interest, earnings, and application fees. For the current fiscal year, we anticipated $1,500 in interest earnings and $20,000 in application fees.
Madam Chair, Kai, why the large increase in interest revenue from 15 to 8,500?
That came from the Auditor Controller's Office, and Omar from the Auditor Controller's Office is here to ask that question because I don't know the specific
That's
answer.
a major increase.
It's a significant increase, yes, larger than we've had in several years.
So we had hidden money, Omar, someplace that we...
The reason for the large increase is that over the past 2 years, property values have decreased, interest rates have been really low, and they started going up last year, but for some reason or another, it wasn't included on time to be included in the adopted budget. So we realized that this year that interest rates were really high, and up to today, we've received $6,000 in interest.
Oh.
So that's where we recommended to Kai to increase.
So Judge
budget.
Hintz kind of balanced out his. I'm going to meet with him at noon, so, no, good, that's great, yeah. Thank you.
Right, and so we're recommending to carry that over to the next fiscal year as part of the proposed budget of $8,500. The application fees, we're estimating to be $20,000. That was in the current budget. We are going to achieve that. We're projecting to achieve that. And so we're going to, again, carry that over to the proposed budget as well. And finally, other governmental agencies. I mean, as you know, the other governmental agencies provide the overwhelming majority of our budget. And those are divided into 3 categories, 1/3 by the county of Ventura, 1/3 by the 10 cities, and 1/3 by the 30 independent special districts. Now for the adopted budget, the current year's budget, each of these groups were required to submit almost $209,000. For the recommended budget, there's going to be a nominal decrease down to $207,532, or a decrease of $1,465, or 0.7%. And that comes in large part because we're appropriating the $115,000 in unassigned fund balance. So there will be no increase to our funding agencies. They will have a nominal decrease in the amount of toward our budget. Again, this is just a summary of all of our revenues. The adopted budget's almost 744, projected almost 656, and proposed 766,096. And with that, the recommendation is to adopt the resolution attached to your staff report approving the proposed budget for next fiscal year.
Yes, Commissioner Richards?
In your report, you identify that the budget has been sent to the county, cities, and special districts. Did you receive any comments with regards from those organizations?
We did not.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Ramirez?
And Commissioner Freeman has a
Oh,
question.
sorry, Commissioner Freeman?
Thanks, you, Kai, for the thorough report. I have just a procedural kind of question. On the fund balance, which on page 119 shows $403,169 for 2018-19. As a percent of the budget, that seems like a very large fund balance. Is that consistent throughout other counties' budgets or through LAFCo's? I mean, is it possible that the fund balance doesn't need to be as high as it is and there could be some reductions?
Absolutely. LAFCOs operate both ways. Some LAFCOs operate on a really, really tight budget with very little fund balance left over. Others operate in our manner where there is some fund balance left over. We didn't anticipate the fund balance to be so high this year. So that was kind of a fluke. We have been slowly trying to pay down that fund balance by appropriating some of it to reduce the costs to the funding agencies. Now, the $115,000 appropriation is the highest we've done, I think, ever. And my thought was that the commission can go ahead and increase that to lower the allocations even more. But my thought was to do that next year, so there's some money left over, so the decrease is not such that the following year there'll be an increase because that fund balance won't be there. The calls that we get about the budget are typically from the cities or district asking us, how much are you going to charge us? Because they're starting their budget process earlier than ours. And when we say we don't know, most likely estimate it based on what you had the previous year. So instead of hitting them with a large increase in 2 years, our thought was to slowly raise that so they can better accommodate that in their budgets.
So looking in the future, if the fund balance maintains itself or increases, all the contributors, city, special districts, and county, could almost count on it being a flat, not changing over a few years.
Yeah, eventually, when we pay down the fund balance or when we have lower fund balance, then it will be the increases every year, say 5% increase in the budget, will be passed on directly to the funding agencies.
So even with the large fund balance, we can anticipate in future years an increase?
Right. But if we're using some of the fund balance, it won't be as big every year until we get to that point.
So my question really came down to, is there a need for that larger fund balance?
No, there's not a need for it. And like I said, we could give it all back to the funding agencies if we would like, but then they're going to have to start paying a larger portion toward.
Yeah, well, I think you need a fund balance. I'm just
Right.
looking at the amount.
The Board of Supervisors has been looking at a 15% of our general fund to be in our reserves as a, if there's some kind of percentage out there that we should be aiming for and what others use, I don't know if that applies to to LAFCOs.
Well, I mean, the commission does require a 10% contingency and then a 60-day operating capital and unassigned fund balance. Beyond that, it's up to the commission whether they want, and there's the $100,000 litigation fee, but that's committed. Beyond that, if the commission feels that is sufficient, the commission can take stronger action to reduce the amount of the remaining unassigned fund balance. I've been trying to do that incrementally, and we just didn't anticipate to have such a large amount this year.
It would be good to know what that is. I think it's some municipal organization that establishes, or municipal financial organization that establishes the percentage policies. It might be good to know, and then we'll know if, where we stand in that and whether we want to adopt, seeing that we always have, this percentage in reserves. Commissioner Rooney?
I think Commissioner Ramirez was next.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the retirement benefit. Does that individual, if you can say, still receive a benefit but not at LAFCo's expense?
No, the benefit ended. The benefit was based on her longevity with the county, and it was pre the newer rules, which kicked in a few years ago. So she received 1 year benefit for every 5 years working for the county. And so LAFCo had to take that on, provide that 1-to-5 ratio, and that ended in February.
Could you enlighten me as to the county's policy to retirement health benefits? Is it just for management, or is it for union employees?
This retired, I don't know.
Oh, no.
I believe the employees have an opportunity to purchase into the county's health care plan
right.
at a lower rate.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Supervisor
do.
Darrigo?
But they purchase it, correct? It's
Yes.
not a given benefit.
No.
But it's not a benefit to employees hired after a certain time
I see.
frame. Right.
Thank you. And then I just want to make sure we don't have any litigation going on. There's nothing I'm aware of, correct?
That's correct. No litigation.
Is there anticipated litigation that we haven't heard about?
None that I'm aware of.
Not
Maybe
that I'm
after
aware of.
this afternoon? No, it's
All
not.
right,
Hope
we
not.
just say not yet.
Not yet. That's always the case, because anybody could sue anytime. Thank you very much.
Did you want to comment, Commissioner Rooney?
I do. I'd like to comment on the apportionment of net operating expenses. That's on page 140. As I was looking through this, I guess I had a different lens on when I was reviewing it this year. But as I look at the apportionment of these expenses, it doesn't seem like there's equity between the three groups. So like the city of Fillmore, if we look at what their fees are, they pay, I'm going to use big numbers, $4,500, round numbers, $4,500, and they have an operating budget of $20 million. Compare that to Pleasant Valley Parks and Rec, who pays $5,500 and only has an $8.3 million budget. So I look at that and I go, wow, if you take this as part of their revenue, it's a larger percentage for the special districts that are paying it. And then, so I flipped it and said, okay, well, let's look at the revenue. And if you look at Callegas, they have $130 million and they pay $86,000 compared to the city of Ventura that has $172 million. That's as close as I could find. And they only pay, half of the amount. So it doesn't seem like there's equity in the fees that are being paid for the special districts as it's compared to the cities. I know it's probably not a popular comment here, but I look at this and I go, there seems to be an inequity in the fees that are being paid. So my question is, are we relegated by law to split them between all three of these? Is it a commission policy? How does it come about, when you have a $1 billion agency paying $207,000, it's not as big as an impact as it comes down to the special districts that have generally lower revenues. So I want to bring it up because it just seems like there's an equity issue here.
In short, it's a requirement of LAFCo law. It is a requirement that the counties, cities, and independent special districts pay a third of the majority of each LAFCO's budget. And then that third, of course, is divvied up based on revenue. And so it's not based on budgets, it's solely based on revenue. And that's how this plays out when that revenue, or when the allocations are divided up based on the revenue of each agency. And in terms of Calleguas, Calleguas has brought this up several times, that the $130 million in revenue they receive is much of it is passed through. It goes to Met. It's not really even their revenue.
Yeah.
But because it is considered revenue in the eyes of the state, it has to be used by LAFCo as revenue. Now, that being said, there are ways, if the special districts, independent special districts, want to get together and change how their fees to LAFCO are allocated, they can do that. There is a provision in the law to allow them to do that. But most of them that are paying a lower amount would be less inclined to change it. But again, if the independent special districts as a group want to change it, they do have that ability.
Now, just to follow up on one of your comments, it said that the total revenue excludes money that comes from other governments. So in Calleguas' point, if they get money from Metropolitan Water District, doesn't that exclude them from that money that's coming down through them?
No, what I said is that even though the revenue, part of this $130,000 going to Calleguas, though it's considered revenue to Calleguas, is passed through. Calleguas doesn't get it. It goes to Met. But because it goes through Calleguas first, the state says, no, we're considering the Met revenue as your revenue for purposes of determining LAFCO apportionments.
But the comment at the bottom of page 140 says it excludes aids from other governments.
So do you look at the total Calleguas budget and take the 0.07%, or do you look at the actual revenue minus a pass-through?
It's only revenue. Total revenue exclude aid from other governments. That's not considered aid.
I have a question. So you say the special districts could get together and develop a different system, but that system would still be based on the 1/3.
Because that's state law.
Yes, it would still be the 1/3.
So, they can argue amongst themselves.
Sounds like we need to make a trip to Sacramento.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. So
I just want to point that out, that, we could fool with it, but we still are obligated to 1/3.
Unless laws change.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes,
Madam Chair, I'd like to recommend, that we keep the reserves as recommended, to keep the rates stable for all three agencies, if you want to call it that. And then maybe come out with a recommendation on how much money we should keep in reserves. Is that 10% plus legal, and maybe talk about that too.
Sure, I can converse with other LAFCOs and see if they have any policies out there. And like I said, my goal has been to reduce that amount, that unassigned fund balance, by slowly giving it back to the cities.
But I always
and
believe
districts.
having money in the bank is really important, because you never know. And I think we have a bad year, and then we're all in trouble. So having a little piggy bank there, I think is important.
Okay.
And I know that at one time LAFCO was sued, and that made a tremendous impact on the budget, correct?
That's right.
Right, because then, the LAFCO then has to replace that money. Like with the litigation account, if that's expended, then we slowly have to build that back up, and that comes from the funding agencies.
And since all the different entities voted for something, we're all kind of, as entities, responsible for our decisions too, if you think about it.
Somebody made the motion and to approve, or?
Yes, so you did make a motion, right?
I'll second his motion.
And then, so it's to come back with that policy.
And then,
We have another question
Or
before we
question.
vote on this.
If we were to have litigation, it could cost more than 100,000. What would be our remedy?
We could use the unassigned fund balance.
What
toward
if
that.
it exceeded that, God forbid?
Then, if it wasn't accounted for in the budget, we may have to borrow from the county.
Yeah.
And then when we borrow from the county, we are then going to have to make up that difference from the counties, cities, and special districts.
So there would be a special assessment?
It would be reflected in an increase in the apportionments.
I see.
And
Thank
that's
you.
assuming it isn't the county that's suing LAFCo, because they're not going to lend you the money.
That's true.
All right, that will never happen, right? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please? Yes, sir.
If I may, if the commission wants to consider a policy about how much unassigned fund balance it retains, I would recommend not making that part of this.
okay.
I'll make it a separate motion.
Separate.
Right,
Okay.
yes, come back at another time, because we are on a time frame for adopting this budget
Okay.
under the law, so.
All right, so just the first motion, the maker of the motion's okay with just
Yes,
the
I'm okay.
original recommendation?
And I'm
And
comfortable
so is the
with the second.
second.
Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions?
I'm going to abstain under protest of the equity issue.
Okay, got it. And that's just, and the two special
Special di-
districts, there you go, hang together, guys. So we have two abstentions from the special districts, otherwise it's unanimous. Otherwise, it would
Yeah.
be everyone in support. And now a separate motion regarding the policy on our reserves.
To come back to that, with that. Okay. Well, I'll make,
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Freeman to come back with a policy proposal.
yes.
Was Commissioner Freeman?
Freeman.
And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition? Not seeing any, then that passes also. We'll go on then to our next agenda item, and that would be item 13. No. So once we moved that 12 around, I got confused. It is 13.
13, right.
So that is the schedule for initiating the sphere of influence reviews and updates.
Yes, and as you know, the commission is required to review and, if necessary, update the spheres of each city and special district every 5 years. The commission established a schedule to do that 5 years ago. So we are now proposing essentially the same set schedule. It's just a continuation of the previous 5-year schedule. And that really is it. Commissioner Rooney did point out to me an error on page 189 regarding the Oxnard Harbor District. It says that its most recent MSR was part of the Drainage District's MSR in 2005. That's incorrect. So I would recommend a change. Their last MSR was in 2007, and it was district-specific. So we're not making any changes. Essentially, it's just a continuation of the currently approved work plan, and we just recommended the approval.
Do we have any comments on this? We have a motion for approval and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition? Not seeing any. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to our next item, item 14. And this is the update on LAFCo legislation.
Right, and no.
Okay, then
Staff.
we'll go ahead and pass on to the executive officer's report. Yes, on the legislative one?
Yes.
Okay, then let's go back to the legislative item 14.
There's a bill that's a Cal LAFCo sponsored bill. It's AB 2258. And it deals with, I'm sure you all read it, but establishment of the Strategic Growth Council, which is great. It's grants to help LAFCOs do special studies. My concern when I read it, it has a 50% protest vote in order for it to not, any of the annexations or reorganizations to be defeated by the people that are being affected by the action. And I think 50% is extreme because it's almost impossible to get 10%. And I don't understand why it was at 50%. There are, generally, when it's a LAFCO-initiated action, it's 10%. I would like to recommend to Cal LAFCO that they reconsider the 50% and come down to something more reasonable, like 10%, 15%. Because what it's saying in the legislation is whatever the project is, it's going to move forward. Because without a big uprising, the vote doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's obvious by the fire district action in Santa Paula. Anyway, that's my comment.
I would comment that for water weight increases and other Prop 218 kind of votes, sometimes you can get 50% or more people opposing something.
But I think 50% is a pretty high plateau. I mean, I would like to move that it be that Cal LAFCO reconsider their bill and maybe bring it down to 20%. I mean, even that's a high plateau.
Is there time to actually get comments back that you could research it and get back to us on this?
I have.
He's on the Cal LAFCO legislative committee.
Yeah, and I've also talked to Pamela Miller, the executive director with Cal LAFCO, both at the workshop and this morning. This bill is still going through a lot of iterations, but I can give you what the bill says if you would like some more detail. So under current LAFCO, this is going to take a while because it's really complicated.
Excuse me, Mr. Loma, before you do that,
yes,
which will be fine to do, I just want to caution that for Brown Act purposes, you can discuss the bill and you can discuss the pros and cons, that's fine.
Okay.
In terms of taking any action to take a position with Cal LAFCO, the item will need to be brought back to you at a future meeting in order to actually vote on a position to take.
Okay.
So under current LAFCO law, I don't know if this is on. Under current LAFCO law, the commission does have the authority to initiate certain types of proposals. And those include a district consolidation, a district dissolution, a merger, the establishment of a subsidiary district, or the formation of a new district. The commission can initiate these on its own. Now, under another section of LAFCO law, if the commission is the one that initiates these and approves it, the protest is set at 10%. So the 10% of voters as opposed to 25%. Now, if any of these were proposed by an entity other than the commission, say a district, the threshold is 25%. So the commission is held to a different threshold, a higher essentially threshold of which is easier to, of 10%. So it's easier for people to protest a LAFCO action than it is for a LAFCO action based on another agency making the submittal. Now, that doesn't apply to a dissolution. So if the commission proposes a dissolution, and if that dissolution is consistent with a prior action of the commission, say the commission prepared a special study or established a sphere of influence or prepared a municipal service review that says this district should be dissolved, and they took that action, then if that district applies, there are no protest proceedings. LAFCO has no discretion. But if another agency applies and say, hey, we want to propose the dissolution of this district, that you already took an action that it should be dissolved, then the protest goes up to 50%. Now that's under current law. That's what the current law says. So already for dissolutions, under this provision, it's up to 50%. So now talking about the proposed Assembly Bill 2258. The original intent of that bill was to provide grant funding for LAFCO to initiate dissolutions of districts that the state determined to be inactive. Now the state passed a law a year ago saying that inactive districts must be dissolved if they're determined to be inactive districts by the state. LAFCO has no choice. because this was an unfunded mandate, LAFCo said, well, we would like grant money for this. But the grant money was also to provide the commission with money to do special studies, because a special study was going to have to be prepared in order to determine that this formation is going to be, or this district is going to be dissolved. So based on recommendations from the Little Hoover Commission, which said that aside from these districts that are going to be forced to dissolve, LAFCOs were not taking the initiative to dissolve districts that they found to be, that they needed dissolution. And part of that hesitancy was based on the fact that the protest threshold was so low. So the commission could go through this study and say, we recommend dissolution, but 10% of the residents can protest, and it's really difficult for these to move forward. So there was a hesitancy on the part of LAFCOs to do this, and that was acknowledged by the Little Hoover Commission. So one of their recommendations was that, well, why don't we just increase the threshold for LAFCO-initiated actions to match that of if the proposal was initiated by another agency? So it just matches it. But it also retains that threshold for dissolutions of 50%. So it's not changing the threshold for dissolutions. That remains under current law. It just changes the threshold for LAFCO-initiated projects which received grant funding. That increases to 25% to reflect the remainder of LAFCO law. So that's a long way to kind of explain that, but that's the impetus behind that. And this is a recommendation. It is a Cal-LAFCO-sponsored bill. It implements recommendations from the Little Hoover Commission, and part of it is consistent with existing law. The other part increases it for everything other than dissolutions from 10 to 25%. That makes sense?
Being that we can't take any action, can you just keep us updated on as that bill goes through?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for the information on that. We're all enlightened. The next item then on our agenda is the executive. Oh, you need a receive and file on that?
Yes.
So
Okay,
moved.
we got a motion and a second. Any objections or abstentions? Not seeing any. That's approved. Next item, executive officers report.
Right. Just we attended the workshop last week. Once again, it was a great workshop. Some really informative sessions. And again, it's always great to see our colleagues and talk about things. The amount of information we get in just these discussions outside of the sessions is just invaluable. Like this information, that what I talked with Pamela about this legislation. So we thank you for continuing to fund that. It really is helpful to LAFCO staff. I was going to talk about the protest hearing, but I already did that.
Mm-hmm.
And just the next LAFCO meeting will be May 16th.
Yeah, I know at the Board of Supervisors yesterday, Supervisor Long, who oversees Santa Paula, was wondering what the status was of the protest because the public was interested. So I know that you sent an email to educate the board on that, and similar to what you stated today.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. Also, looking at the agenda, the next item's commissioner comments, but we also have item 5, which is commission presentation announcements, and I'm thinking we probably could no longer need item 5 as long as we already have commissioner comments at the bottom. So I would recommend that you change the format of the agenda in the future so we don't have all that much to say. If there's no objection. No. Okay, good. Thank you. And with that, then, unless there's more commissioner comments?
Madam Chair, I know we talked about the budget, but I'd like to commend Kai and the staff for an excellent budget. It looks great. We have low reserves, and it kind of feels good when we have money in the bank.
Oh, yeah, it does.
But I just want to thank you and the staff, and I want to thank our council, too, for taking a reduction in its pay.
It's not that we're going to use them any less.
All right. Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Not quite yet? You have more? Okay.
On May 3rd, from 4:30 to 6:30. This is a very exciting event. the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District will be moving in, will be hosting an open house in our new building.
Oh.
It's at 4201 Guardian Way in Simi Valley. We've been in our facilities for over 55 years. So this is a major undertaking. The facilities are big enough to house offices, recreation, and all our maintenance. And so we're hopeful that it'll work again for another 50 years. But if you feel like a drive to see me, it's May 3rd at 4:30 to 6:30.
Congratulations. And now that we have the commission comments at the end, we have all kinds of comments.
I know it. So on May 23rd, the port is hosting our Coastal Trident exercise program with our Marine Advanced Systems Technology Laboratory, which is open to the county to utilize and come out to the port, see what new technology is going on and what people who work in the maritime industry are using. The Navy and many of their tenant commands will be participating in this event. It's May 23rd. It's all day, and we will serve you lunch. And lunch is going to be surrounded by global technology and innovation and how it relates to the world and all things maritime. So you can come out. Thanks.
Neat to have that available. And I would note, too, the general plan update yesterday at the board, we talked about making sure to incorporate the port more into the business and vitality plan. So. Now shall we be adjourned? Sounds good. Okay, we are adjourned.
Yeah, I am, but what about the rest of us in the city? Thank you. Gracias.